What if Count Dooku had been turned by Palpatine and took the Jedi down from within? The funeral pyre burned low, the flames licking at the night air as Qui-Gon Jinn's body was consumed by fire. Count Dooku stood at the edge of the gathered Jedi, his face a mask of solemn contemplation. The Order's greatest warrior, their truest Jedi, was dead, and the Council had let it happen. He glanced at Obi-Wan Kenobi, the young Jedi kneeling before the flames, his grief plain to see. Dooku exhaled sharply. The Sith had returned. Qui-Gon had died at a Sith's hand. And what had the Council done? Dismissed his warnings, denied the truth, just as they had always done. He clenched his fists beneath his robes. This was not the Jedi Order he had once believed in. This was not the Order Qui-Gon had believed in. Perhaps it was time to leave. Master Dooku. A voice, smooth, familiar. Dooku turned. Senator Palpatine of Naboo stood beside him, his expression unreadable. The man had been a quiet figure in the background of this crisis, offering condolences and measured wisdom. And now, he was here. They spoke in whispers, away from the ears of the Council. Palpatine played the role of the concerned statesman perfectly. "I understand your pain, Master Dooku," he said, his voice heavy with sympathy. "I too knew Qui-Gon well. He was a visionary, a man of conviction, of independence, traits rarely appreciated by the Jedi Council." Dooku said nothing. Palpatine took a step closer. "It is no secret that you have your own doubts about the Jedi and their role in the Republic. They claim to be peacekeepers, yet they serve a corrupt Senate, bound by bureaucracy and stagnation. Qui-Gon saw this, and now he is gone." Dooku's jaw tightened. "You're not alone in your doubts," Palpatine continued, placing a hand over his heart. "I, too, have watched the Senate crumble under its own weight. The Republic is decaying, Master Dooku. It is dying, and the Jedi are blind to it." He let the words hang in the air, then spoke the next with careful precision. "But together, perhaps we could change that." Dooku's eyes narrowed. "Change it? How?" Palpatine smiled. "Not by abandoning it, not by rebelling against it." His voice dropped to a whisper. "But by reshaping it from within." Dooku studied him carefully. "Qui-Gon once told me," Palpatine continued, "that you believed the Jedi had lost their way, that they had become servants to politicians instead of protectors of the people. He was right. You are right. But leaving the Jedi Order in protest, what would that accomplish? You would be cast out, ignored, labelled a traitor." Palpatine leaned in slightly. "But if you remained within the Order, if you gathered like-minded Jedi, perhaps you could guide them towards true change, toward true freedom." Dooku exhaled, his mind a storm. For years he had considered leaving. For years he had watched the Republic rot while the Jedi stood idle. And yet, what if leaving was not the answer? What if staying was? "You have given me much to think about, Senator," Dooku said at last. Palpatine smiled. "Take your time, my friend. The future is ours to shape." And with that, he left, disappearing into the night. Dooku remained, watching the last embers of his apprentice's pyre fade to nothing. His decision had been made. Dooku did not leave the Order. Not yet. Instead, he played his role as he always had. Respected master, seasoned warrior, elder statesman of the Jedi. He attended council meetings, trained younglings, and debated politics with his peers. But beneath the surface, he was working. He began identifying the disillusioned. There were many like him, Jedi who whispered of their doubts in hushed corridors, who questioned the council's judgment, but lacked the strength to voice it openly. He listened to them, encouraged them, subtly guided them. He did not promise them rebellion. He did not offer them defiance. He offered them hope. The Jedi Order has become stagnant, he would say. The galaxy is changing, yet we cling to the old ways. We have allowed ourselves to become blind, and if we do not act, we will fall with it. One by one, they came to believe in him, and all the while, he was erasing the evidence of his future plans. It was not difficult. He had spent years in the archives, gaining the trust of Jocasta Nu, the Order's chief librarian. She saw him as a scholar, a man of wisdom, and so, when he requested access to the restricted files, she did not question it. Late one evening, he entered the archives alone. The Camino system was stored deep in the Jedi records. Dooku deleted it. Not just Camino, but every system Palpatine had deemed important. Worlds that had already pledged loyalty to their cause. Worlds that would serve as a sanctuary for the Jedi he would one day take with him. With a wave of his hand, they vanished from the archives, lost to the Order, forgotten. The separatist movement gained momentum. War broke out across the galaxy, and yet Dooku refused to fight. While Jedi were deployed to battlefields, he remained behind the walls of the temple, serving as a figure of wisdom and diplomacy. He gained more followers. More Jedi began to question the war. More began to seek his guidance. They say we are peacekeepers, Dooku told them. Yet, we lead troops into battle. We kill. We die. The Jedi Order was never meant for this. It was the perfect trap. They believed him. They followed him. And when the time was right, he led them away. The war raged on. The Jedi were too preoccupied with the front lines to notice the slow rot within their own ranks. Dooku had spent years cultivating his followers, Jedi who had lost faith in the Order, who believed their leaders had betrayed the very principles they were sworn to uphold. And so, when the time came, he orchestrated their deaths. Their fake deaths. It was an unremarkable skirmish, one of many fought across the Outer Rim. A separatist ambush, a desperate retreat, and a sacrifice. Dooku's Jedi, his loyalists, were deployed to the front lines. But their mission was a lie. Before the battle began, the separatists knew their orders. Not to kill these Jedi, but to make it seem as if they had fallen. In the chaos of war, it was easy to falsify the reports. Bodies burned beyond recognition. Helmets left behind in the dirt. The names of fallen warriors recorded in the archives. As far as the Jedi Order was concerned, they were dead. But in truth, they had disappeared. Dooku's forces had been secretly extracted and brought to the hidden worlds where he had erased from the archives. Separatist-controlled sanctuaries where they could train undisturbed. Here, the Jedi Order no longer held sway. Here, they were reborn. He trained them himself, not in the ways of the Sith, but in his own way. The Jedi had failed them. The Republic had used them, but they would be different. They call us traitors, Dooku told them, his voice deep with conviction. They brand us as cowards, but we know the truth. The Jedi have abandoned their principles. They serve politicians, not the Force. We will be the ones to restore balance. And they believed him. For months they honed their skills, perfecting their techniques, learning to fight not as individuals, but as a force. They trained to kill Jedi. And when they were ready, he led them home. Coruscant burned. The Separatists had launched a full-scale invasion, throwing the Republic into chaos. While the Jedi fought in the streets, while Kenobi, Skywalker, Windu, and Yoda led the charge, Dooku returned to the temple. And he was not alone. The lost Jedi, the ones presumed dead, the ones the Order had forgotten, followed him through the temple gates. There was no warning, no mercy. It was a massacre. The younglings were the first to fall. Masters and knights rushed to defend the sacred halls, but they were unprepared for the betrayal. For the enemies they faced were not droids, not Sith, not soldiers. They were Jedi. They had fought side by side. They had bled together. And now they were slaughtering their own. Blades clashed. Screams echoed. The Force trembled with death. By the time Republic forces pushed the Separatists back, it was too late. The temple had been cleansed. Dooku stood amid the corpses, his dark robes stained with the blood of his former kin. And as the Jedi rushed inside, horrified, broken, too late to stop what had happened, the final betrayal began. The clones turned on them. The Jedi rushed into the temple, their robes billowing in the thick, smoke-filled air. Kenobi, Skywalker, Windu, Yoda. They had fought through the Separatist forces, repelling the droid legions that they had descended upon the capital. But what they found inside the temple was not victory. It was slaughter. Bodies of Padawans, knights, and masters were strewn across the sacred halls. Blood stained the stone floors, mingling with the flickering embers of fallen torches. The air was thick with the stench of death, of betrayal, of something far worse than war. Then, the clones raised their blasters. The Jedi had no time to react. The very soldiers who had fought beside them, who had protected them on countless battlefields, now turned their weapons on them without hesitation. And they opened fire. Blaster bolts streaked through the air. A Jedi Master to Kenobi's right fell before he could even ignite his saber. Another collapsed beside Windu, his chest smoking. Skywalker deflected the incoming fire, cutting through the ranks of the clones. But for every trooper he struck down, more took their place. "Traitors!" Windu roared, his violet blade carving through the chaos. "Stand down!" But the clones did not falter, and Dooku watched from the shadows. The plan had worked flawlessly. The Jedi had fought valiantly, but they had walked into a trap of their own making. Dooku's hidden Jedi, his true Jedi, had done their part. They had executed the order from within, while the clones delivered the final blow. Coruscant's sky glowed red with fire. Above it all, Palpatine watched. From his Senate chamber, the Supreme Chancellor observed the carnage unfold, his face hidden behind a mask of grim concern. But beneath the mask, he was smiling. The Jedi were falling, and soon they would be gone. Dooku turned from Windu's body, victorious. But then, the shadows shifted. and from the flames, Darth Sidious emerged. His hood was raised, his golden eyes glowing with malice. His face bore the faintest trace of a smile, one that Dooku did not trust. "My lord," Dooku said, stepping forward, "the Jedi are finished." Sidious did not respond. Instead, he raised his hand. Lightning erupted from his fingertips. Dooku barely had time to react before the storm of pure, searing energy struck him. His body convulsed in agony, his lightsaber falling from his grip. He tried to scream, but the pain was too much. Sidious stepped closer, watching his apprentice suffer. "You have served your purpose, Lord Tyrannus," Sidious whispered. "But your time is over." Dooku collapsed to his knees. His body was broken, his strength fading. He looked up at the Sith Master he had served, the man he had trusted, and he understood. Palpatine had never planned for him to rule at his side. He had always been a pawn, just like the Jedi. As Dooku fell, the galaxy fell with him. Drop the scenarios you would like to see in the comments, and I will pick one every week for Fan Friday. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.